Good evening, everyone. My name is William Iannuzzi. I'm president of the Board of Education. I would like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Iannuzzi,
Here.
Ms. Barrios Brooks,
Here.
Ms. Pavosa,
Present.
Ms. Castellano Minaya,
Here.
Ms. Lewis, Ms. Ross, Mr. Vega,
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Millie. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is over there. Do any of my colleagues have any announcements they would like to make? I would just like to say this upcoming Saturday at Albert Leonard is their annual Girls Leadership Conference. So if you haven't registered, they have sessions for both parents and students. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's update. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you very much, President Iannuzzi. Good evening to our board trustees and to our public who are here with us in person and to those who are watching us remotely. This evening, sir, I do not have a report to give so that we can get right to our budget presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Reynolds. So next up are discussion items. So we have two presentations tonight, one on the budget and one on the school election budget vote. Dr. Reynolds and team, do you want us to sit here or move over there?
Thank you. Good evening to the Board of Education. Good evening to our public once again. It is my honor and my privilege to present to you two of my colleagues who are going to walk us through this evening's continued discussion of our 24-25 proposed budget. This evening is budget workshop number 5. I firstly would like to thank the Board of Education for indulging us. This meeting is a special meeting to meet the needs of our budget presentation and preparation. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to our cabinet, to our administrators, and to all of the personnel who have worked to help to bring us to where we are currently in our budget. We have, over the last 4 presentations, presented to you snippets of the budget as we are building it. We wanted this to be an opportunity to view our budget in a story-like manner, in a way that will help to deepen your understanding of what it takes to build and, more importantly, to correct a budget so that we have something that is financially responsible for our future. This evening, we will bring to you the conclusion of our snippets of information, as well as a summary. This evening, we will also present to the public what the budget-to-budget increase is, as well as what we are asking in terms of I don't want to use that word, in terms of a request from our public to help to support this budget. So tonight I'm going to bring to the microphone once again our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Carlos Leal, and our Business Administrator, Ms. Joy Mike.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Okay. If I may just jump in, because we have quite a bit of content to discuss this evening. But of course, I'll start with a review of the slides. Or I will not. Oh, this way? Sorry. So the interpretive dance of the budget. Okay. Do I just gotta point back? No. Okay, great, thank you. All right, fantastic. So again, the budget development process, which we have reviewed with you and the public. We met last week, Thursday? Tuesday. Okay. So again, we've added the line here, the commitment to the strategic plan and the whole child to promote positive outcomes. And so all of our conversations are rooted in that, maintaining our priority again on student outcomes, no layoffs, reducing discretionary spending, leveraging attrition and retirements and being thoughtful about those decisions, and then staying within the allowable tax cap. Again, the review of the variables. We added the dollar amounts and the percentages. So the state aid, the proposed foundation aid increase of 12%, which was the $7,062,569, and then the statewide lobbying foundation aid continues. And I'm sure you've heard this throughout the state. Again, another variable was the expiring of the ESSER grant, the increase in liability insurance and transportation, increase, again, also in health insurance, retirement, and then how do we maximize the use of reserves to minimize taxpayers if needed was also a consideration. Aligned to our strategic roadmap, ensuring that the things that we came forward to the community to say we support and developing together, that we stay true to that. So I want to bring us back to, I want to say December 3rd was our first coming together to discuss the budget. And we presented with the district enrollment as of Beds Day. And if you'll notice on the bottom column, or the bottom row, total K-12, and it's circled, and I can't even see that far myself, so let me go back to, yeah, thank you. And the reason we circled that specifically because this is what our beds number was at the time of beds. This is our number currently as of this past Friday. So it's a very different number than, again, I'll go backwards. This is what was projected, and this is what our actual is. Keeping in mind that we receive our funding based on the beds number, and that's important to keep in mind. But this is where we are. So the trend in terms of losing students is not true, a true narrative. People want to continue to stay with us and be with us. We also presented at the same time, back in December, the approach to the equity per pupil allocations, and we provided you with this explanation. If you look at the column of all students, regular education students those percentages are combined of all students, including special ed and ENL. And then the ENL and special ed population are broken down, and then it's the percentage of that percentage in the third and the fourth column. And then we also provided you with the equity allocation, which again, there was an equity conversation. I can't remember the date, what the year that you guys presented that as our approach, but again, making sense of that. It was a while, 2020? Yeah. So budget snapshot, I'll let Joy jump in here and kind of walk you through a few more snippets before we summarize all things together.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. So the next slide is really a picture of this school year, our revenue and expenditures. On the revenue side, you'll see that state aid is just over 25% of our budget, property taxes just over 70%, and other revenues make about 4.3%. On the expenditure side, health insurance and benefits, 12% and 5%, salaries and other expenses at 51% and 26%. That was that 74% of our current budget is salary and benefits. So for the budget snapshot, we will discuss this evening curriculum and instruction, school buildings, special education, employee benefits, and revenue. This first slide covers our curriculum instruction areas, or areas of teaching and learning, through our school buildings, research and planning, our special schools, and our special education programs as well. Consistent with the other budget discussions, we did start with a discretionary spending reduction of 20%. That's, again, the materials, supplies, and contracts. The initial reductions in these function areas was $3.9 million, and the unbudgeted requests that were submitted back in November, December was just under $7 million. The increases that are on the chart to your right are aligned to the collective bargaining agreements and contracts. We are maintaining current staffing minus natural attrition. The budget reflects alignment with state budget standards and shifting of staff from our grant funds into our general fund, with an overall increase of 8.4%. In sort of the middle of the chart where you see special education codes or function codes 2250, you'll see an increase of just under $6 million. That relates to an increase in services for special education, which we will expand upon a little later. You'll also see a pretty significant increase, it would look, for program for English language learners or EL students. That is simply because those services, those teachers, those educators were not budgeted in the proper state function codes. So we've reallocated staff to where they should go so that as we report those expenditures, they're reported accurately. We also have teaching special schools that looks like a pretty significant increase. That is a combination of our Huguenot Academy, our evening school at the high school, and our expanded learning programs as well. So as you see the numbers shifting, it is in alignment with where the staff should be budgeted. Let's see. And so we also have our school library and our guidance services on this slide as well. Overall increase again of 8.4%. So consistent with how we've been approaching our budget conversation, we've also looked at what are the BOCES services associated with our instructional side of the house. And so these increases are aligned to BOCES rates or proposed rates for 24-25. Expenses are shifted to reflect the department use of the BOCES service. So where you see significant increases or decreases, those expenses are aligned to the department and how they're using it. And so again, in alignment with our state budget standards. We also are maintaining our occupational education options for our high school students. So those are the CTE programs that they go to BOCES campuses for. So the overall increase here for the BOCES portion of the instructional budget is 9.1%. And there are some service increases for our special education students, again, in the 2250 function code. You will also note a consolidation of 2061 to 2060, which is our research, accountability, and assessment. The function code is being shifted in alignment with the state standard. This is mine too. Okay, so going on to employee benefits, I know we showed the 23-24 budget, sort of what's salary and benefits. So these benefits start with our state retirement system. That's for our classified staff and civil service staff, that 9010 function code, and then you have the teacher's retirement system and those increases that are listed on the right. Social Security, which you're all familiar with. I want to point out that workers' compensation also looks like a significant increase. It is not. Previously, the accounting for it was in our risk retention fund, so we would transfer money out of the general fund into another fund to pay those expenses. We're no longer doing that. It belongs in the general fund, and so that's where we're going to pay for those expenses moving forward. Unemployment hasn't changed. Our health insurance is about 10.3%. We talked a lot about the rates for night shift going up for active employees and for retirees between 9% and 24+%. So that's accounted for there. Our union welfare benefits and other employee benefits are pretty much stable. So the overall increase in our benefit lines of 10.8%. I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Liao, who will get into additional details.
Thank you. So you've seen a few more snippets, and looking forward, our desire now is to really start to put all those pieces together so that you could see it in a comprehensive approach. The first being the summary of expenditures by function. And you'll notice on this chart that general supports has an increased change of 17.5%. Instruction is 8.8%. But if you go back to the previous slide of 8.4%, this does not include BOCES, whereas in summary, this includes the BOCES as well. Okay, so that's where you're going to see some discrepancies. Transportation, of course, there's an increase, and every effort is being made to make that as efficient as possible. Debt service and transfers, and then employee benefits, which Joy just spoke about. So the total expenditures with all of that would be $347,487,639, as compared to last year, which was $316,135,242. So budget to budget, it would be a difference of 9.9%. Seeing it a different way, through the expenditures by object. And object would be the type of expense. So if you think about salaries and benefits, again, an increase. Contractual services, 12.5%, supplies and materials. This is where we were able to make some adjustments based on the expenditures, the discretionary spending. BOCES services has increased 10.7%. Again, debt services and transfers, and then other. So again, with a total of 487,639, compared to the 316,135,242, which is our current, which is at 9.9% budget to budget difference. In terms of staffing, for the 24-25 general funding staff summary, we had 33 grant-funded employees moved into general funds. 2 of those employee positions were moved into IDA grant funds, and 46 employees basically shared with us their intent to retire, and they have submitted their intent. 15 of those 46, there's an intention to replace, and 31 of those not to replace. And then the last line item here, the 22 new positions to support special education classrooms. So I have vacancies because now there are vacancies if the budget goes through, but it is an additional 22 positions in service of being able to to do away with the current variances that we have in play and to better meet the needs of our students and develop classrooms that are appropriate. I'll speak a little to the state aid revenue, which we kind of spoke to earlier. So the foundation aid here, again, this is a recap. There's an increase of $7,062,259, a difference of 12.1%. The expense-based aid, which is also part of that formula, has a slight increase of $2,141,617 for 11%. Instructional materials aid, and then other operational aid. So the governor's proposal for state aid, this is as of January 16th, given that things could change again. And at the end of the presentation, we actually are moving a little timeline backwards a bit to see what kind of plays out in hopes that we will be in a better position. The state lobbying again continues with a request to hold harmless provision to return. The Senate and Assembly budget, the final state budget negotiations continue. And then, of course, they're supposed to come out on April 1st with a budget. We don't anticipate that being the case at this moment, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. But overall, state aid has increased in 11.6%. And so we have fared better than some of our neighbors, which again, if you're following the news, many of us are all in difficult places trying to figure out how do we move beyond COVID years. In terms of proposed revenue, this is really hard for me to read. The real property tax increase would be $8,808,379, an increase of 3.95%. Our pilots would also increase, and if you recall, pilots was the in lieu of taxes. Charges for services, state aid, the special aid under miscellaneous, that particular line is also included in the special aid that we receive. Interfund transfer from reserves is $2,846,076, a difference of 1,212.55%. And that's coming from our debt services, our ERS, and anticipated aid from Medicaid. So as we continue to improve our processes, we also would receive additional dollars. I think that captures those items there. And then here, side by side, like the first chart that was presented for 23-24, and side by side, again, state federal aid at 25.9% in this given year. And if you notice, the larger blue section is really the majority of our budget, which is incorporating our staffing and our expenditures related to that. So wanted to also bring back this particular slide that was also presented in December. This was our tax level history, and I kind of want to do a teacher move and walk over to the screen, but I know I can't. But if you were to follow me on the rows from 2015 and go across, the maximum percent we were able, our allowable tax on that given year was 1.4%. The ask to our community was 1.4%. 2015, 2016, it was 2%, and the ask was 2%. And so you'll see that pattern of what was our taxable allowable marker, and then we asked the community. We also have a visual that will represent that for you momentarily. And then in 2020, 2021, COVID happened. And then as a community, we needed to make some adjustments. And so 2020, 2021, 21, 22, 23, 24, on those given years, the tax percent increase, for example, in 21, 22 was 2.73%. And we went out to the community and we asked for 2.29, 22, 23 was 2.55%, and we asked the community for 0.98. Last year, we could have asked for 2.19%, because that was our max, and we asked the community for 0.98. This year, going back to past practice, if we continue what we were doing prior to COVID, which is going to the max tax levy that's allowable at 3.9%, then we would ask for 3.95%. But I think this particular rows, columns, kind of highlight what I'm speaking of. And this visual representation, I think, says it or shows it best, truly. We showed 5 years of difference in December, I believe, and I think the year before that, we may have showed you 10, actually. But for our purposes tonight, the arrow that shows the maximum allowable tax levy within that triangle, I'll call it the triangle of influence, where the COVID relief fund, that bracket shows you where in 2021, we began to deviate from what our regular practice was. So if you think about it, when the COVID relief funds came forward, we were able to also basically forward those reliefs out to the community. And so because those additional dollars were coming in, we could ask for less. And so we shared in that sense. Now that the monies are sunsetting, we're finding our groove in response to COVID. The ask is that we return back to past practice, which is maintain going to the allowable tax so that we can fund appropriately. Right now. For now. Oh, yes, well, for now. I can't predict into the future, but for now, this is where we're going. So in summary, again, trying to kind of put it all together so that it makes sense to the community, the proposed budget to budget increase is an additional $31,352,937, again, a 9.9% increase. The proposed tax levy of 3.95% would give us an increase of the dollar amount would be $231,593. I should look at my paper because I truly can't see that far. Thank you. And the projected tax rate. So I'm going to ask Joy to jump in on here because I just realized that I was going to ask you to present on this one because you have some unique aspects to it.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So in terms of the tax rate, I wouldn't expect you to all to remember the tax rates for this year. The projected rate per $1,000 of assessed value, that is the assessed value of your home. So your home may be assessed at $3,000, it could be assessed at $30,000. The average home in New Rochelle, according to our assessor's office, is at the $16,000 level. So that being said, per $1,000 of assessed value, the anticipated tax rate is $866.92, which is an increase of $27.71. For a home that's assessed at that average level of $16,000, the annual increase for this budget, this 3.95% tax levy increase, will be $443.34. For those who may be paying a mortgage, like we are in my house, that monthly increase at that $16,000 of assessed value is $36.95. And I have on the bottom that this is for illustration. What can change this would be changes in the assessments across the city, changes in our pilots, changes in assessed values, changes related to tax cert proceedings. So those things are finalized at the end of, or the beginning of the tax season by the assessor's office. Okay. And so going forward in our budget roadmap, as we talk about the dates, our next budget work session will be on March 21st, where we will share the summary budget in its totality. You've had sort of snapshots all along, and so we'll have the full budget in front. We are anticipating a budget adoption on April 2nd, which is the day after the state budget is supposed to be submitted, although we don't anticipate it on April 1st. It would be great if it was. The BOCES budget vote, if you recall the rates that we've been talking about, the BOCES slides that we were talking about, the board will be presented with a vote of those rates, and that is scheduled for April 16th. We still have our budget hearing scheduled for May 7th, and the annual meeting, trustee election, and budget vote is scheduled for May 21st. As we conclude, we just want to bring the community back into remembrance of how to provide feedback. And so we have our board presentations that are upcoming. We have the administrator requests, community meetings that are planned throughout April and May, I believe. The budget hearing, which I mentioned, is the 7th, and additional budget review sessions. We do have an email address that you can send your questions to, either boe@nredlearn.org or to 2425budgetquestions@nredlearn.org. And of course, you can always attend a school board meeting, watch via the website. I believe these meetings are also available via Zoom, and archival of past meetings. We also have budget roadshows that are planned in the coming weeks. So with that, I will turn it over to questions and discussion, and Dr. Reynolds.
And Mr. President and the board, if I may just take this opportunity to remind the community that we have 3 propositions up for vote this year. The first proposition being the budget itself. So keeping in mind that this is an increase budget to budget of 9.9%, but we are utilizing some of our reserves and ERS funds in order to mitigate that hit to the community. And we are asking for a tax levy of 3.95%, which does not pierce the tax cap. That's number one. Number two, the second proposition is a proposition to utilize those funds to help to mitigate. The capital reserve, thank you. So we want to ensure that we are utilizing capital reserve funds, which will not be an impact to the taxpayer. And the third proposition is a proposition to create another reserve so that when we are able to recover these funds, we have some place to put the money, and we're looking for a
$50 million.
no, how many years?
20 years.
A 20-year span and a limit of up to $50 million to be held there. So those are the three propositions that will be up: the budget itself, the capital reserve, the use of capital reserve, and the creation of another capital reserve. The last two propositions will not be subject to a dollar amount to come out of the pockets of our taxpayers. So with that, I will ask if you have any questions.
Thank you all for the presentation. The first question I want to start off with, you know, we're always told 2% cap, and we're going to 3.9%. And I know you said it doesn't pierce the cap. Can you explain how that's possible?
I think I was voted for that question. Okay. Our maximum allowable tax levy, if I could go back to the slide that kind of talks about our tax rate. So since the tax cap's inception in 2008, okay, somewhere around there, everyone thought it was a 2% tax cap. Well, for us, in 2014, it was I have to read this, and that's too small, 1.40. So you see multiple years that the tax cap, our maximum allowable tax levy, was more or less than 2%. There are a number of factors that go into that equation, including the tax-based growth factor, how many buildings are built in your city, as well as what CPI is sitting at. We talked about CPI being 4.12%. However, we can't, for us, right, that rate is no more than 2%. It's either 2% or CPI, whichever is less. And so for us, the tax cap this year is 3.95%. Last year it was, I'm sorry, I need to get that slide on. 2.19%. So it is somewhat of a moving target. There are different factors in that equation, but we are not asking for a supermajority. If we were to say we need a 4% tax levy increase, that would require a supermajority, and that would be piercing the tax cap. But 3.95 is within our maximum allowable tax levy.
And if I may add to that, so in those years that the tax cap was being presented, that average number of 2% is what was used for illustrative purposes only. So that's the vernacular that became embedded in people's minds, that you can't go above 2%. For every community, for every district, that number is different depending on all of those other variables.
Great, thank you. If you can go back to the 24-25 general fund staffing summary slide. It's slide 18.
Okay.
That one, yeah. So we're reducing 31 positions, but we're adding 22 for the vacancies for special ed. So basically, we're reducing 9 positions by attrition, if I'm doing that correctly?
That's correct, yes. So that is a great analysis of that number. You know, we struggled really, really hard with the type of wording we were going to use for this, right? So attrition, reduction, replacement. But the story really is there are 46 retirees that are in place for us this year. 15 of those positions will be replaced automatically with new hires, and 31 of them we're looking to reallocate. And that reallocation may not hit every building, right? So in some buildings, we're looking at buildings that have historically low, very, very low class size, you know, numbers like 14 and 15 in a general education classroom. This is the year that we're stating we can no longer maintain that unless it's across the board. And we're trying to build equity in all of our schools. So in doing that, we're able to reduce a few positions here and there, well, 31. But we are also trying to attend to the needs of our students, particularly our population with special education. You know, it's been years that almost every school district in New York State has been out of some sort of compliance as it relates to special education. And we know that COVID has taken an effect on the average child. I would say that it has doubly taken effect on those who present with more challenges. So we want to assure that we're meeting the needs of our students in those classrooms. Number one, better, let me say better. And number two, we want to ensure that we are moving away from seeking variances from the state as it relates to different types of classroom settings that we're not able to offer in this district by building them now.
By any chance, do we receive any extra aid because it's for special education from the state? 'Cause I know in the past, like, and this is going back a couple years, when we presented some of the budgets, we were told these are mandated positions for special ed and mandated positions for like ENL teachers. So I was just wondering if we get, because they're mandated, do we get any extra aid for that?
Not exactly. So the aid that we receive for special education services really comes into play for the types of services for students. So there's like a high cost or private excess cost for services that are, I guess, higher than normal, that you would be aided based on those additional services for a particular student. There's a system in place to sort of recapture that and to get the aid associated with additional services for certain students. So it's not exactly more aid, more students. It depends on the types of services that they're receiving.
Thank you. Any other?
Can I add, because that's part of the whole foundation aid package, and again, it's part of the foundation aid package, and because it's not like a clear line, this, there, that, for that. So that's why the recoding and coding correctly is crucial, because then we're reporting accurate numbers to the state.
And I'll say that a lot of districts suffer from this also when we start to create different codes to put money in for certain opportunities for students and for teachers. What happens is if the state goes into our system to take a look at what our budget looks like and a code is not recognized, we do not get the funding for, appropriate funding for what it is that we need it for. So we're ensuring now with this budget, all of our dollars to the cent are represented in a way that is state approved, well, state recognized, so that any independent look at our budget will tell the exact story of who we are and what it is that we are providing to our students.
Yes, just as a comment really quickly, I wanted to thank you for all of this work, because I know that it must have been a lot just to get it this concise, and I really appreciate that, because it's one of the easier budget presentations in the last years, and I think that's important, this way that we can get more engagement, more questions, and all of that. It's very great to be able to just hand it off like to a parent or a teacher and say, here's a presentation from last night, and they're going to be able to understand it without too much explanation. Thank you.
I'd like to echo that same sentiment. I mentioned earlier to some of my colleagues that people feel as if having had it broken down so that it's not just thrown at them, and how it's taken months to go through this and how you're continuing. Thank you very much for that. I also am very happy to see that our numbers are several hundred over what was projected, because that's an indication that perhaps we will be able to continue in that manner, and that's wonderful to see as well. I don't like to see that our cap is anything, but, hey, reality strikes.
So actually, my question is a follow-up to Ms. Bavos's point, which is you mentioned that the BEDS data, we're now about 300 students above our October BEDS data, and I'm just curious, is that typical? In other words, if we did a snapshot of March 2023, would we have been higher than the BEDS data from fall 2022?
So in many cases, yes. In many cases, yes. Oftentimes, the number that we get on that first Wednesday in October greatly differs by the end of the year. What we also find is in many communities, there is cyclical flight as well. So students come into us throughout the year, and then over the summer, we find that some students leave us. So that's why it's been chosen by the state to have that Beds Day on that particular date. That is why we only get funding based on that, because somebody can come in and leave. I'll even bring another thing in, as it relates to some charter schools. We find in some communities, students come out of a charter school right before testing, come back to their home school, and then leave again, right? So that is also the story of the district.
Thank you. I just want to explain part of why I asked was really understanding to what extent we're seeing a leveling off. And, if we were to predict what our fall 2024 data is going to look like, I was curious if this rebound was higher than normal, about the same as we typically get through a year. So if you don't have the answer, it's fine now, but I would be curious, maybe even the past 2 or 3 years, how much increase we saw from beds to this point in time to understand and inform whether or not this is normal, below average, or above average. And that's relevant in terms of thinking about staffing, et cetera, going into the next year. So that would be great. I have 2 more quick questions. Well, I guess it's a comment / question. I'm noting in the summary of expenditures by object chart, the pretty significant reduction on supplies, materials, and other, which is equipment, software, textbooks, and tuition expenditures. And I can understand, slide 17. And that all makes total sense based on the narrative you've shared. I just want to express, I guess, a curiosity or a question about making sure that we still have enough supplies, materials, equipment, software, textbooks, and because I understand the desire not to reduce the staff, but if the staff don't have what they need, there's a tension there on the extreme, there's a tension there as well. So I guess maybe for this year, I kind of get it, but I'm sort of noting that seems like a pretty dramatic decrease. If that's because we thought there was a lot of waste or opportunities to be more efficient because of digital textbooks as opposed to, if there are reasons for that are efficiencies, great. If it's just that we're in austerity there, I would like to understand a little bit about, how building leaders, et cetera, are feeling about that, and really just for us to know as we're thinking going forward, because I can tell you if I saw that in my kid's classroom and it meant they had less of all the things that they need, less crayons, and parents now are having to supplement that more, et cetera, I would rather know that ahead of time and think about what our relationship with the New Rochelle Fund for Excellence might be to help supplant that, et cetera. So I'm sort of noting that and wanting to understand if that leaves us with a gap and if we need to think about creative ways to fill it. And the pilot funds on slide 20, I see an increase of 38%, and Ms. Mike mentioned that as she was talking, but I was just, is there any additional context as to why that revenue is increasing that you can?
We received those details from the City of New Rochelle. There is a schedule for pilot payments for all of the organizations that have a pilot agreement. So the schedule is what we have, and sometimes that schedule increases or sometimes they come off or on, but that is the most up-to-date information that we have related to the organizations that are receiving that have received a pilot agreement.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Ross?
First of all, thank you very much for sort of just the series of these presentations. And I 100% agree with Dawn, is that it's made it much easier to digest and understand overall. I have a few questions, and I also have a concern as well. So my question, well, one of them was actually going back to the beds data, is it's October, and then it says we updated it as of March. So is it still October data? Are we comparing apples to apples across, or are we actually comparing March to October?
So the actual Beds Day data for actual data is always going to be on that Beds Day. So whatever year you see an actual date, it's always that snapshot that first week in October. And so the one that says actual 2023 is our actual beds enrollment on that date. It was 9,688, am I correct? And then we overlaid the number that we received from our student support services staff as of this past Friday.
So what's the difference between what was noted in October and what's noted now?
It's 300.
Because I thought, the only one I see is the
something.
9.
It's over 250 students, the difference between October and today.
today.
Okay, okay. Oh, I see, but okay.
I think it might have printed with the new number on
It
top.
only
Got
printed
it.
with the
And
new
not the
number.
9688.
So please take a look at the fantastic visuals. So the 9688 is not on yours. It's automatically shaded from the printing.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
9688.
That's what the part I
9688
missed, was
on
where it's
Beds Day. Let me say it
9600.
for the community
I
at home.
understand, I got it.
On Beds Day in October, on that specific date, not the day before, not that week, not the day after, on that specific date, on our roster, we had 9,688 students. Since that date, when we took a look at a snapshot on Friday, just to tell the story, because in many of the articles that you see being released as it relates to school budgets, there's always this talk about the reduction of students, right? That we're losing students. We wanted to make it very clear to our community that when looking at where we were just in October to where we are as of Friday, we have a difference of over 250 students that have come into our district. So that is not our story. But keeping in mind, we are only getting funding from the state based on the Beds Day number. So we are doing for more students coming into our district, and they are entitled to be here. We're doing more for more students with less funding on an annual basis. So that's the story we also want to tell.
Got it. And then the property taxes, the revenue that we get from taxes, is it only personal property taxes? And I feel like one of my colleagues might have asked this in a prior year, but does that include businesses and other entities that are in New Rochelle?
So if you look at slide number, I can't see the bottom of that, sorry. 20, thank you, slide number 20. The real property taxes on that top line account for your tax levy on the property as well as STAR. So there's also a portion of STAR that goes into that number. And then the non-property tax items will include the consumer tax, we also get revenue from Westchester County sales tax. So those are those non-property tax items.
Got it. So then the real property taxes is really personal
line.
property taxes. It's not businesses. Those go in a different line.
Correct, unless the business is on the tax rolls and not receiving a pilot agreement.
Okay. All right.
If that makes sense, if a business is being assessed like any other property. A pilot agreement is a payment in lieu of tax. So it's for certain entities that have an agreement with the city to pay based on a schedule rather than their full property going onto the assessment rolls, okay? So there could be some businesses that are being assessed on the assessment rolls, and so they would have real property taxes and not a pilot agreement.
So like all these new buildings that have gone up in New Rochelle, where would their property taxes be?
It's a great question.
I'm going to step out on a ledge and conjecture that many of the new buildings, let me change that. Some of the new buildings will have pilots instead of real property tax. That's the incentive for building in New Rochelle. It's a promise that for a few years, We're not going to charge you the full realm of taxes so that you'll build here, and then after that expires, then you'll be able to provide to us the valued assessment of your tax.
So can we find out from the city, like when those things will expire so we can better project our taxes? Like,
Yes,
so
we are working diligently with our partners in the city to get that information in as real time as possible.
And just for clarification, who authorizes the pilots? Just for clarification, so everyone knows, it's not us, it's the city.
It
Just
is,
wanted
it is a city,
clarification.
and the city, yes, it is a city.
Okay.
Nothing to do with authorizing pilots. Thank you.
That's correct. This Board of Education has nothing to do with authorizing pilots.
Yes. And then, sorry, I have a couple more questions. So who determines the tax levy, the max? That maximum, the 3.95, who and where does that come from?
That's the formula.
Well,
So that's a state formula that is driven by the we put in the information, and the state automatically gives us what our tax levy is.
Got it. Do we know what our neighbors, how that compares against our neighbors?
That's a very good question. I'm so glad you asked that. So the information that we have as of right now, because no one has an adopted budget yet, and as a matter of fact, only small city school districts, one of whom we are required to adopt our budget earlier than the rest of the school districts in our region, right? So no one has a prescribed school district tax cap, budget request yet. But informally polling my colleagues who are superintendents at our most lower Hudson Regional Superintendents meeting, districts, small and large, are asking for increases that range between 3% and 7% across the board. Some districts, and you'll know one who's pretty large in this region, is asking for over 10%, close to 11%. We have a very small number of districts that are asking for less than 2%. Everyone seems to be asking for some sort of an increase, some sort of a levy. Some have expressed piercing their tax levy. Some districts have already articulated informally that we are going to have to go above our tax levy. Some of those districts, as well as some who are not piercing their tax levy, have automatically stated we are cutting positions before we even get started. So those are the conversations that are being held in the rooms. That's the information as I have it today. But everyone right now, the range is pretty much between 3% and 7%.
Got it. That's super helpful. Because it really goes to my next concern, right, is that 3.95 is significant. For the average taxpayer, that's thousands of dollars that are going to be coming out of their pocket on an annual basis. So as a sort of being fiscally prudent, that is one of my concerns, is when I look at the budget and we know that there's just for the regular consumer, as you mentioned, the CPI index, like inflation, cost of food, and now these sort of property taxes increase, it can be an additional burden. So it's something that I don't necessarily have an answer, because I look at this and I don't want to have our children in any way suffer, but at the same time, almost 4% does feel very high to me. And it's helpful to know that other districts are not necessarily at 2% or 1%, that they're closer in our range, but at the same time, just for our particular taxpayers, I feel like that is still a significant amount.
I agree with you, and please know that your words don't fall lightly on us, and please know that we've struggled with even coming to the community to ask this. But not to educate you, but to educate the community. I just want us to take a look at slide number 22, just to get an understanding of why it is that we're currently asking for 3.95. When you take a look at the years that we used grant funding to supplement our ask from the community. In 2020, 2021, our tax cap was 0.38%. We asked for 0 that year. In 21-22, our tax cap, our maximum percent increase was 2.73%. We asked for 2.29%. In 22-23, it was 2.55%. We asked for 0.98. In 23-24 this year, maximum allowable was 2.19%. We asked for 0.98. Over those years that we did not ask for the maximum allowable, and again, I want to reestablish what I shared off mic with Mr. Leal to share. I don't want this to become our practice. We have to work away from that practice. But here's what happens. If you don't go maximum allowable, there is a total of $7,868,000 that's unaccounted for in our budget. When you look at what we're asking for this year, the increase is $8.8 million, right? So that's the money that we left on the table by not going maximum allowable. We are asking this year to go maximum allowable to kind of course correct so that we don't have to get into this practice from year to year. Here's where I'm nervous. Here's where my team is not even looking at me right now. In order to make that happen without piercing the tax cap, we are taking from our savings, right? So that is not a healthy practice to do year after year either, right? So we are working to course correct by not being an extreme burden to the taxpayer, and also not eradicating our savings either. We have to be on the right track to get to what's needed for our children in a manageable way. This is a very difficult ask, and we acknowledge that, and we want to be sure that the community understands that we are very cognizant of the request that we are asking in this moment.
Sorry, one question is, you know, there were all these different increases that you've shared that were, some of them were mandated. Can you highlight that in sort of the next, is where we are, and then kind of what were some of those, the 10%, like what did that actually allot to in terms of dollars, so that we can see for each line item. I think there was the increase in insurance, there was the increase in benefits, there's like all these other things. It would be great to see how those dollars kind of add up.
We'll bring that. We'll bring that in a slide or two for next.
Great,
the next
thank you.
meeting.
Ms. Bavosa?
Is there some way we could have a transparent look from the city as to how many years of a tax abatement or pilot or whatever you want to call it is given to each of these buildings or complexes? Because people see more and more buildings going up, and yet they see the school tax has to go to the 3.95. I think it would help if the taxpayer knew what was happening. We have heard different things. We have heard about certain buildings. We do not hear about all of them, and the rumor mill goes crazy. So I, for one, would like to know, as a taxpayer and also as somebody with, you know, family in the district, you know, what is it that the city can do to help us in this situation? And I think there is much they could do. You know, we've enticed a lot of people. Maybe I'll bite my tongue.
Received. Thank you. We will work with our partners in the city to try to get that information more frequently.
So this is actually going back to my pilot question at the beginning of this, which is what I was hoping you would answer, and I'll just sort of circle back to this. I think it would be really useful to know how much of that pilot increase is related to the development, and what, absent that, the cost of taxpayers would be. Because I think, and I'm not suggesting that it is comparable, but what is the delta between, it's not, they're not paying nothing, they're paying something. I would like to know, is it 50% of what we would have gotten if, you know, absent that? Or in other words, so I think, you know, I think we should be really precise in our,
It's really hard for us to hear the questions. I apologize.
you know, in our accusations here, because I think there is money that is coming into the district through that 40% increase in pilot funds, which is not, you know, is not nothing. It's, you know, an increase of $1 million for the year. How much of that is due to the new development would be good to know. And what, if we didn't have that, what would the impact be on our tax levy? To compare that would be really useful. And I just want to, I agree that objectively 3.95 is a large increase, especially historically. I think people are just not used to it. And I think that we need to be really frugal and mindful of that. And I want to just point out to Ms. Ross's point that we're talking about an increase not of thousands of dollars, but of $450 for the year for the average taxpayer, meaning some are less or some are more. So I just don't want people to think that we're proposing a thousands of dollar a year increase to the budget. So I just want it to, or to their payments, because I don't want that to be soundbited out of this meeting. And I want to really underline that point, which is $36.95 a month, which is significant, but not thousands of dollars. And so I think people should just be mindful of that. And finally, I want to say one of the challenges with the increase in everything and inflation is many of the costs that are in this budget that are non-negotiable, like the gas, that whatever's heating this building right now, have gone up. And the answer, if we don't want to raise the tax levy at all, is to either cut staff, pay them. I'm just going to be blunt, right? Like there's, the things in our budget, I would ask all of our colleagues to really think about what are we saying we think should be cut. And if we want to put those things on the table, we should say them. But if not, I think we have to go back to the slide that has the fact that we have not gone up to the cap for many years so that we could take advantage of the federal money that was out there, which allowed taxpayers to not take a hit while we maintained our services. And we're in a year where now we're losing those federal funds, and it's time to pay the piper. So I just want to I want to both acknowledge, look, I pay taxes here too. I don't want to pay extra taxes, but I want us to also be really honest about what the increase is and what are things that we have choices about, and we have very few choices.
I apologize if it came across as accusatory to the district. I feel very strongly that what you've done has really pulled everything out and been transparent. I was really thinking about the city. I would like to know what they are giving, and 40% is great, but for the pilot, but that other 60%, how is that impacting us? And would that have changed the 3.95? So if that came across, my apology for that. But I really am speaking to the transparency from the city, and what do we as a district need to do to step up and say, we need more.
Thank you for that. I don't think anyone on my team took any offense at all, and I definitely did. I'm not smart enough to.
No, I was talking about accusatory toward the city, and maybe we should be, but I just want to I want to understand what we are accusing them of and be precise before we do it, that's all.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Where's the transparency? What are the numbers? I'm willing to sit back and listen, and, we have new blood right now, so maybe things will go a certain way, maybe not, but I'm talking back, I've been here for 40 years. So I'm not just addressing right now, I'm addressing, this is the city, and we want to know what's going on. We want to know what's above the table. We don't want anything under the table. And if it is, let us know, and we'll change it. If not, so be it. So I'll semi-temper what seemed to be accusatory note.
Yeah, sorry, just as a record, since Trustee Bavosa made the statement, I'd say too that there's a whole host of things that the city could and should be partnering with the district on, not only in terms of the tax levies, but also just in general programs for education. We've talked in the past about the lake outside right out here, and what we can do to mitigate further flood damage to the high school, which everybody's kids has to go to this high school. So I think that in the years past, the city has been lacking in offering support as well as being that willing partner to the district to actually do things together.
And just to add to that, as someone who does not own a home and still learning how this works in terms of information that would be helpful, is if the city is responsible for making sure that happens. Like if, for example, they're like, okay, well, you told me to pay this percentage, I'm going to give you 20%. Do they sue their way out the rest? Like what happens if they're not held accountable to what they said that they were going to do? If the city decides what those rules are, I'm assuming there are rules somewhere on how this works, but as we're collecting information, it'll just be helpful to learn for New Rochelle specifically how that works.
So this is a great segue. I mean, not segue, but and actually I was going to tell everyone, email everyone, but we have an opening on the IDA for a Board of Education member. So if anyone is interested in wanting to be that representative for us, our former trustee Amy Moselli's term is up off the IDA, so we now have a potential person.
Explain what that is.
So the IDA is the industrial development agency that oversees the pilots and giving out pilots. It's a city-ran agency, and there's a seat for us to be on it, so we're understanding what pilot implications are happening. We haven't had a sitting member on the committee for a couple years, so we've been a little bit out of the loop, but now we have the opportunity. It's a 5-year term. If anyone's interested, just email me and let me know. And we can definitely get more information about pilots, Ms. Lewis, and to better for better education for the board. Do any other of my colleagues have any questions, Ms. Williams?
Yes, I have comments and questions, and I'm heartened and heartwarmed by you, Dr. Reynolds, Mr. Leal, and Ms. Mike, the way you're working together as a supportive and collaborative team and presenting this story for us. And it's it's easy to follow. You don't have to be a big numbers person. And thank you very much. And I really love the way that you all are working together and you're talking with each other and you're sharing your ideas and you're helping us to understand. And I really find your budget development, the guiding principles, budget roadmap, budget variables, budget snapshot, stakeholder input, and budget vote, the way you laid it out makes it really understandable. And also just the way that you let us know that there are 3 propositions. One is the budget, one is the capital reserve, and one is another reserve. And also about the tax levy, giving us that insight. We all heard that there's a 2% budget cap. So you explained that to us. I have 2 questions about the tax levy on page number 11, slide 22. If you can just help us to understand, because I noticed that in the 2020-2021 year, both the tax limit and the adopted limit were very low. So 2020, 2021, and then 2023 to 2024, our adopted tax levy was lower, significantly lower. So do you think that that's the reason why there was such a large increase this year to 3.95?
It's a good question. Thank you very much. So the first year that you mentioned, 2020, 2021, the 0.38% again is created by the state based on the variables. So every year that you go to your maximum allowable, it potentially decreases the variable that is put into the formula for next year's maximum allowable, potentially. There are other variables that go into that can change that number by bits and pieces. So my assumption, and I am not the financial wizard here, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mike so that she can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. So there are a number of different factors that go into the tax cap formula. The tax-based growth factor I mentioned earlier is a measure of your brick and mortar or the changes in your brick and mortar, and that comes from the Office of Real Property. You also have the 2% or CPI, whichever is greater, or whichever is lesser. In some of those years, CPI was below 2%, so the cap was below 2%. So that's why it's important to look at this formula every year. They look at, what are you doing in terms of your capital projects and things like that. It all goes into this formula. I would say, from my perspective, the 0.38% is because CPI was lower and your other variables also were lower, and so your overall maximum allowable was just 0.38%. in my opinion, in terms of how you levy taxes, I think from a taxpayer perspective, and I am a Westchester taxpayer as well, it's a little easier to digest when you have an incremental increase. When you have a big swing from a 0.98, which is really, really low, to a 3.95, which is high, and certainly in comparison, it's like, well, what's happening? And so my colleagues certainly look to make that as gradual as possible so that you don't have these wild swings. And so I always look at, incremental increases so that we're not coming for a really big increase in 1 year and you see that sort of violent swing from year to year.
Yes, because it is a violent swing, going from 0.98 to 3.95. That is a violent swing.
But keeping in mind that the reason we were at 0.98 was because we had the COVID funds, which we no longer have.
Yes.
So that is sunsetting this year. That's the reason why we are asking for that much money to support what we have in place for our students.
Okay, so that makes it clear. So you answered my second question. And I just have one more question. It's slide number 24. It's 12 on the packet. 1, 2, 3. If you go down to line number 4, it says average New Rochelle home assessed value of $16,000. We have $1 million homes here in New Rochelle, so why is it only assessed at $16,000?
So please keep in mind that this is just for illustrative purposes only. And the number that we've gotten from the city is that is the average assessed value of the average home in New Rochelle. So that's not going to be the case for every home, but most homes in New Rochelle hover around that $16,000 number.
And I think it's the calculation I was doing, which is not correct, because I did that and said, oh my gosh, it's like thousands of dollars. Assessed value is actually like the a fraction,
It is,
which
right,
is
it's
on
not, it
some
is not what you would
table.
sell your home for.
Yes. Can you
Right.
please clarify that one, like 100%, because that's what flipped me out. when I took it.
$16,000. It's like you can't even get an apartment for $16,000. Like, what is that? Yes,
That
thank
it is
you.
not, this is not a representative of what you would sell your home for. The full value of your house, of your home.
So what is it? It's a formula. So can you just take us through it a little bit?
So you have a city assessor who looks at every piece of property. So your home may be valued at $1 million, right? So that's what you would sell it for on the market. But it may not match what the assessor's value is. So the assessor does a percentage based on a formula that they have to utilize. So that's why on in many Zillow ads, you'll see what the home is worth and what the home is assessed at. And what's represented here is just the assessment portion. It's not the assessment total. So there's a formula that I wish, you know what, we probably need to get that information from a realtor so I can explain it much better. So let me work on that so that I can
Thank
bring that
you.
answer back to you more eloquently. I don't want to give the wrong information.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for all of the information that you're giving us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. I have 2 more questions. The over 200 increase of students that we got throughout the year, do we know what the cause of that was? Like where they're coming from? Are they moving to New Rochelle? Are they moving to new developments?
So we do have the information of where they currently are. We do have the information of where they came from. We know which schools they're in, and we do know what their residences are. We can provide that to you offline because, of course, it's student information. We don't want to share a whole lot of it here. I can attest that based on the information that I have, based on registration, these are not students coming to us who are displaced migrants or things of that nature, or the things that we see happening in New York City. New York City is not busing children up to us. That is not the case. These are persons who have real connections to New Rochelle or have chosen to live here.
I think it is important, though, if they're coming from new developments, it should be made publicly for everyone to know. So if like 70% of these 250 are coming from new developments, I think publicly we should state that.
We will share that.
My second question, and it might be insensitive, and I don't want it to be insensitive, but we're moving 30-something positions from ESSER funds to the general fund, and we stated no layoffs. That's one of our priorities. And the question is, why is all the positions necessary from your opinion? And I know this is a question we're going to get, so I wanted to make it publicly first.
Over the years, COVID has decimated our students' abilities to perform at their highest levels. The United States government and the New York State government and the New York State Education Department has acknowledged that. In order to meet the needs of our students in real time on a daily basis, it was agreed that there are very particular employees that needed to be added, for the most part, to everyone's cadre so that we are able to meet students' needs. So keeping in mind that the ESSER funds that were provided to school districts had a very prescribed allowance for how those monies were used. In our district, we knew that we needed to increase our ability to meet our students' needs. So we increased that ability by adding certain positions to the district. We are committed to ensuring that those positions are maintained in our general funds, in our general budgets, so that we can continue to support our students. We do know that the effects of COVID are long-lasting, and we haven't seen the end of the effects yet. Even though COVID may now just be another flu, the effects of long-term COVID are very different than having the flu. So with that being said, for this year, it has always been professed that we would maintain those positions. The question that came up at a board meeting earlier this month was, how come we don't know what the reward is for the positions that we currently have? We do know what the reward is. We heard at our presentation when we were talking about how many counselors we were able to hire with these positions, that there's still a need for there to be a more immediate response to families. So we want to ensure that we are really determining what best practices are in place, what this budget, if it's passed, will afford us to do, and then we can make an assessment of which positions are necessary or which positions might have some workload that can be distributed differently. We didn't want to come into this budget like some other districts are saying, you know what, we still have COVID, but we can't afford it, we're just cutting the positions. That's, in my sense and in my opinion, is not a responsible action. And especially if we are able to do that without piercing our tax cap, I think it's responsible action for this district to ensure that we have those bodies in place, because quite honestly, the budget that we are asking for, there are still some asks that we're not able to provide within this budget, right? So we really have to assess who we have in place to perform what we need for our students. That answered your question.
No, it didn't. I appreciate that. The one other recommendation I would have, like once we're going to adopt this budget April 5th, 2nd. Sorry. During the budget roadshow that we're going to start having, like to really sell it, I think we need to highlight achievements that we also have. So I know graduation rate has increased since 2019. We've seen from last year an increase in our state math and ELA scores. I really think we need to highlight these achievements that we're seeing using some of these ESSER dollars and why we're bringing them to the general fund.
I appreciate that. And please know that information will be shared with the public more readily. We want to have some in-depth conversation with the board first, and then we will share that with the community. And I just wanted to address something that was said. I thank you very much for the acknowledgement of how the team works together, but we're just the face and voice of a larger team. So I really want to acknowledge all of the administrators, but more importantly, all of the assistant superintendents, executive directors, and directors who have really given blood, sweat, and tears in order to bring this to fruition.
Great, thank you. Do any of my other of my colleagues have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda. Thank you guys very much. So next up, we have a special presentation about this election and budget vote from our district clerk. We'll talk about voting, where to vote, how to vote, and all that jazz. And running for the board here. Ms. Bonilla, you are up.
Good evening. I will be presenting an overview of this year's school election. So to start off, the election this year will take place on Tuesday, May 21st. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. This is a list of our 13 polling locations. Most of them are within our school district, but there are a few of them which are within New Rochelle and not school locations. So those are SED 5, which is MLK or 95 Lincoln, SED 11, which is New Rochelle Fire Station 1, and SED 13, which is 570 Fifth Avenue. Something to note here is with community feedback, we were able to secure parking for those locations. So the parking at SED 5 will be located in Bethesda Church, which is right next door. East End will have parking alongside Harrison and Cedar Street. And SED 13 will have some reserved spots right in the lot. So all locations will have ample parking. So this is a sample of one of the locations. Some of the entrances have changed, and also some of our buildings are pretty large, so people aren't sure of which entrance to go in. So on our webpage, which we will access later, here's the link, but I will walk you through it at the end. You will have a picture of every single polling place designated where the entrance is and where its parking is, so it'll be easier for all of the voters to come out and vote. So, voter registration. If you are new to voting, if you're new to the election, and you would like to be interested in coming out to vote, but you're not sure, am I registered? What do I need to do? So these are the qualifications for voting. You must be a citizen of the United States, you must be 18 or older, and you have to be a resident of the district for a period of 30 days preceding the election, which again is May 21st, and also otherwise prohibited from voting, which essentially is incarceration or another reason such as that. If you would like to register, you can register online or in person by filling out the New York State voter registration form at either the DMV or the Westchester County Board of Elections. They're located in White Plains. You also have the option, if you are not interested in voting in general elections and you would just like to vote for our school elections, we will have personal voter registration. Again, this is solely for voting in school elections. So that will be on Tuesday, April 30th between 4 and 8 p.m. and that'll take place in Central Administration, City Hall. The deadline to register to vote as a whole in either personal or general voting is Tuesday, May 7th. All right, so if you meet our team, this is a group of lovely ladies which assist with the election on the day of, or just if you come to register, this is gonna be your go-to. So you have Miss Sabri, who is my new assistant, and Rolanda, if you'd like to say hello. We have Ms. Shankman, who is a certified election inspector and also part of the Board of Registrations. Vicky. And sorry, I forgot to say Ms. Sabri is also part of the Board of Registration. Ms. Santiago, who is the Executive Secretary to the Superintendent and part of the Board of Registration. And Ms. DeRafali, who works in accounts payable and is also part of the Board of Registration. So again, if you are interested in registering to vote or coming out, one of these ladies will be able to help you, as well as myself. And this is actually the vote here signs that you will be looking for when you go to the polling places. So as you see, they're pretty large, they're in a highlighter color, so they're not easily missed. Okay, so now new this year, we have early mail voting. Due to recent New York State law, which made it applicable to school elections, we now will be offering early mail voting. So what is early mail voting? Early mail voting, you could think of as absentee voting. It is the same deadlines, the same process, the same procedure. You need to submit an application in order to pick up one of these ballots to receive one of these. The only difference is that with early mail voting, you do not need a reason. So with absentee, you do need to state your reason, whether it's you're out of the district or you cannot attend, and early mail is just you would like to vote early, you can vote via early mail. So Please note that, again, this won't affect absentee ballots that are being sent to permanently sick and disabled list. So if you are registered as permanently sick and disabled, you will automatically get your absentee ballot. Otherwise, if you would like an early mail or absentee, you may download the application on our website. And again, we will go through on our website where that's located. Or you can pick one up at the district clerk's office. That is located in City Hall, 515 North Avenue. Please note that all applications must be signed by the voter, and they must be either mailed or handed in person. We are not accepting these applications via email, so only in person or via regular mail. These ballots cannot be accepted earlier than 30 days before the election, which this year is Monday, April 22nd. So again, they are available for you to pick them up in the office or online, but you cannot drop them off before the 22nd. And then all applications as a whole must be received by Tuesday, May 14th. If you would like it mailed, that is for us to give time to receive it and then for you to send it back. And then if you would just like to hand it in person, then that is the day before the election, which is Monday, May 20th. This is a snapshot of the early mail ballot application. So this is the application that you would be looking for, and you are able to designate a specific person to come pick it up if you would like to, and you can't come out yourself. So with the yellow arrow, you will see you designate the person right there. That person solely can come pick it up for you. And then all ballots, so again, this is now after you have filled out the application, after you have turned it in, we have given you your ballot. When you're turning the ballot back, we have to receive it by 5 p.m. on the day of the election. And that has to be to the district clerk's office. So please do not drop off your ballots directly to your polling location. We're instructing our inspectors as well to make sure that if somebody's dropping one off, they bring it to City Hall. The reason for that is they must be checked in our system to make sure that we are not doing any sort of double voting. So we do have to have them on time, and those will be canvassed at the end with the rest of the absentee ballots and the ballots that are going into the machines. And now for the fun part. So if you're interested in running for the Board of Education, this year we currently have 4 open seats. As you know, the board is comprised of 9 members, and we run at large. That means that you are not running for a specific seat. So currently there are 2 terms, which are 5 years. Those are full terms that will be beginning on July 1st and ending on June 30th, 2029. We have 1 current open seat, which will be beginning on May 21st and ending on June 30th, 2027. And we will have another current open seat that will be beginning on May 21st and ending on June 30th, 2026. And those are a balance of the unexpired terms, so the current open seats. Now, the candidate packets are already ready. You can pick them up either in the office or you can download them on our webpage. The packets for the New Rochelle Public Library are also available, so a lot of people are not aware of that, but we also manage the budget vote and the vote for the library trustees. So the New Rochelle Public Library is comprised of 7 members who also run at large, so you're not running for a specific seat, just a placement. And currently they have 2 open positions that will be full 5-year terms beginning on July 1 and ending on June 30th. So a couple things to note if you are interested in running for the board or the library. Nominating petitions have to be signed by a minimum of 100 qualified voters. So that means, again, they would meet the prerequisites that we had on the previous slide, 18 or older, a resident of New Rochelle, et cetera. And those nominating petitions are due 20 days before the election or May 1st. So May 1st, those need to be into the clerk's office by 5 p.m. And then the following day, on Thursday the 2nd at 4:30 p.m., we do conduct a drawing of the ballot position. So that's everybody who has handed in all their paperwork and is running. They will come and pick what order your name will appear on the ballot. So finishing off, we have a couple of important dates. We have the public hearing on the 24-25 proposed budget on Tuesday, May 7th. That's going to be at 7 p.m. in the new Remington Boys and Girls Club. So if you're interested in finding out more about the budget and what exactly you're voting on, we suggest you attend that. You can also find more information in our legal notice. So the legal notice is printed in both English and Spanish. It is circulated in the Journal News and in Westchester Hispano newspaper 4 times between April and May. The first publishing to look out for is on Friday, April 5th. We will also have the legal notice posted online once it is available. So a couple of statistics here. We have had low turnout. The past 2 years, we've had about 5.5% and almost 7%. So we want to just encourage everybody to vote. Again, Tuesday, May 21st. And if you have any questions from here to now, you can contact myself. There's the phone number and email. And before we move on to questions and discussions, I'm just going to ask Travis to pull up our webpage. So we have worked on creating a page on our website that's going to have all the resources for those interested in the election and running for the board. So if you scroll down a little bit, here's an outline of the seats and their terms, as well as what exactly the roles and responsibility of the board is. If you keep scrolling down, we have all of the candidate forms, the nominating petitions, everything you need to fill out here. And if you keep going down, here's the information for the library, if you're interested in running for the library. Go a little bit down. Here's where you would find the applications for either absentee, early mail, or military. And then, Travis, if you say click here on polling school sites. So we were able to work with facilities on this and put up a screenshot of every single polling place, designating with the triangles where you will be entering, where you can park, where signage would be. Because again, something to note, a couple of the locations have changed. So for example, Barnard that we had up used to be in the gymnasium, and now it's the auditorium library. So we could change the entrance in some of the locations. So just make sure to check here or give us a call and we'll let you know. And then, Travis, if you go back, find your school election district. So this is something neat that would be very helpful if you're not sure where you're going to vote. If you click on where do I vote, we're going to use City Hall as a sample. So we would type in 515 North Avenue, which is our address, click search, and it tells you we are SED 5, which is MLK Center. So right there, you will know where you have to go to vote. Now, if you can go back. Okay, and if we keep scrolling down, there's more information, again, about voter registration. It'll link you directly to, there you go. It'll link you directly to the DMV, to the Board of Registrations. And then we also have, again, the applications there, so they're up top and there. And then if you scroll down and click on election districts, so we were able to get this map as well, which is divided into our 13 polling locations. And if you want to zoom into one, you could see wherever your street is, where your SED, which is school election district, is for you to vote. And then go back. I believe that is it, I think, right? Yes? Okay. So if you can, oh, and the legal notice will be there once we have it available. And then if you could go back to the presentation. Okay. So any questions or, yeah.
Sure. Just amazing. Yes, thank you. This is the most supportive and comprehensive website update that we have seen for candidates and for those voting. And I am very excited to see that there's an option for folks to vote by mail. I know one question that will be asked, I'm sure, by our audience members, so I'll just ask it now, is how do we verify? Like, what is that process? I know you mentioned it, but I just want to hear it again. How do you verify to make sure that there are no double votes and that people are actually voting following policy to ensure that this is more democratic election, and we actually could increase the voter turnout
Yes.
tremendously. So thank you for the accessibility. And what does that process look like from your team?
So thank you so much, Katie, for acknowledging all of our hard work. And I just wanted to point out that we will be adding more to that as well. So once we have all of the candidates that are running, we do plan on putting up bios and pictures, because I know that's something that the community has asked for before. So we're really trying to listen to the feedback, and if we didn't have parking, get parking. If people want to know who the candidates are, get the candidates. So there will be more to come on that section. But in terms of early voting, so last year, well, 2 years ago, we started using NTS, which is an electronic system that moves our polling books from paper to these iPads we have, that we call them. So they actually provide us with our polling rosters, all our books, all our things, and assign a certain number to each person. So we don't even know it. It's like a barcode, and we scan it in. So we already have been using that for absentee ballots. So when they come in, we scan them in, and that automatically goes into the iPad. So when the election inspectors are in the polling site, if you show up to the polling site and you've already voted via absentee ballot, it'll ping for them in red, this person has already voted. So it will work the same with the early voting, which is why we request that they come to the clerk's office and not at the polling, because at the clerk's office is where we would be scanning your barcode that, again, is individually assigned externally to every single voter. So until that is scanned into our machine, it won't ping other people and it won't be counted. But once it is pinged and it is counted, so you are not able to double vote. If that person no longer wants to use their absentee or their early vote, then there is an option for us to essentially void that, and then they can vote at the polling place. But that's how it'll flag for us that it's a double vote.
Thank you so much for this. I love the fact that you have the color-coded page where you can pull it up and say, this is my street, this is where I vote.
Yes.
We really do need to encourage more people to vote. And after all of the effort that you've put in, just a suggestion, and I'm not even sure if this is something that we're able to do, it might behoove us to somehow have a tiny little sheet, maybe in a neon color or brightly colored, decorative way, that could go home with the students to remind parents to vote and let the children encourage their parents. Because 6.9%, 5.3, it's abysmal, and I know that voting is tough all the time, but then if people know and if the children are concerned, then perhaps we'd get more people to show up.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion. We actually are working on sending something over to the principals so that the principals can share it with staff, but we'll definitely keep in mind the parents. And then I also spoke with President Iannuzzi about sending this as a newsletter or an email blast so that the community is also aware about early voting, since it is new this year.
Thank you so much to all of you in your committee.
Yes.
And to what you've done.
Thank you.
I would hate to have had to put this together.
I like it. I like organizing. So, thanks.
Ms. Bonilla, a lot of people don't use websites and internet, so it might be interesting to see if we can put the list of polling locations with the direct instructions in the budget newsletter this year, so everyone might have it if they don't do it. So maybe something to look at and see what the cost would that be.
Mr. Leal.
Ms. Williams?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Bonilla, Ms. Sabri, Ms. Schenkman, Ms. Santiago, and Ms. DeRafoli. I love your pictures on here. Very nice. And thank you very much for all that you're doing. And yes, we need to, I want 20%, a 20% turnout. Okay, so how are we doing that? I don't know. But some things that I have seen, actually like on the day of the election, I've seen, kids go home with a sticker. And if we could send that earlier or sooner, and then also if there's a student performance at the polling place, then the parents will come out to see their children perform.
So we're actually not allowed to do anything like that by law, simply because they think it's distracting. So if you have an event or something going on at one location, a community member or somebody could say that it actually was deterring voting. Maybe they didn't have parking. Maybe somebody didn't want to come out because of the crowd, or you're preferring one location over another. So unfortunately, that's not permissible, but we could think of something else.
Okay, thank you. Okay, never mind. But, hopefully people will come out to vote.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, yet again, as my colleague said, having gone through the process a few times, that's probably the most comprehensive election information as a candidate, as well as to vote as well. I also want to remind everyone, just for the record, too, that also we have the propositions on for vote too. So just a lot of people sometimes they don't want to come out to vote for the particular candidates. They may not know them, but having some kind of partnership to send something through the students' book bags and such to remind everyone about all of this information. And regarding the performance, you can't have a performance in a polling place because it has to have that same rule. But you can have activities at the school. So let's say if it's at the high school here, it can be here in the library, and then everyone's voting in the auditorium. So I would encourage to have those after school activities, or have a lot of activities on election day. This way we're maximizing the amount of people, the amount of engagement that we're going to get at each campus.
Thank you. I can definitely work with Superintendent Reynolds on getting the information to the principals and the schools. And then we'll check with legal on what we can do in certain locations.
Ms. Ross?
Very quickly, I just want to say thank you for the work. I mean, it's amazing.
Thank you.
To have a comprehensive view, to be able to find out where your polling location is. Like, there were so many questions, as Don was talking about, like when you were running around, where do I go vote? Where is it? I don't know. And how to do like absentee ballots, and there's lots of older adults within our community, and so thank you for getting this out. Thank you for having it early. Thank you for having it in places that people can actually access it. And I think to Will's point is just like, how do we just also make sure that we take it outside of just our website and we start to be able to broadcast it more readily. But you guys, awesome, fabulous, like so excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Brooks?
I echo every single thing that my colleagues have said in terms of just the ease and the earliness and the comprehensiveness. It's really amazing. Just two kind of thoughts so that everybody gets to experience the wonder that is this webpage. One is thinking about making sure it's prominently located on our homepage, because I just now was like, it's not so easy to find. And it would be a shame to have all that hard work not be seen. And related to that, I guess I have a couple of thoughts, which is one, it would be great to see what the hit rate of this page is, so that we can sort of track what things that we're doing to drive people, whether that's social media, whether that's having little stickers with QR codes that go to the page, whether it's whatever things we use. It would be great to be able to understand how we can drive people to content on our webpage, so that we can double down and do more of that. I guess I'm looking at both our communications folks and our
So thank you so much for pointing that out. Since people are watching this at home, I just wanted to make sure that they know until we fix that. So if you go to our main webpage here and you go to our district under Board of Education, the page will be right there, 2024 BOE Candidate Resources. See, he went to the wrong place, so you have a good point. So it is the third drop-down, 2024 BOE Candidate Resources, and that is the page. So we will be sure to put that on the main site, so when you come in, you can click directly on it.
Really,
you.
really good work. Thank you.
Yes.
Since we're looking at the website together right now, can we also just make note for all of our viewers that this website in one click is available in other languages? So if you click on the top on the right, you can see that you're able to translate the site into other languages. You can see here English, Chinese, Portuguese, and Spanish. And then if you click it, por ejemplo, you can see there that the website actually is able to switch over into Spanish to make it accessible.
Thank you. And I actually forgot to mention that all of our election information is available in dual language in Spanish as well, down to every single document. So if that is something that is needed, it can be requested, and we have that as well.
I'll make this very brief. Just as somebody who was onboarded this year, I can say that New Rochelle's ahead of the game compared to some of our colleagues in Westchester. So congratulations for making this process easy. I know it's typically a convoluted process of what running for the board could look like, what onboarding can look like. So for those that are at home listening, it is not as confusing as you might assume. New Rochelle is doing our very best, and we are definitely ahead of the game. In terms of partnerships, we mentioned the city before. The library could also be a partner in spreading this word. I know libraries helped us before in school events. So just reaching out to our allies to help us get the vote out.
Yes, and thank you for the maps so that we can click and find out the different places. In the past, we had a PDF that shows all of the districts and the streets. Do we still have that?
So we do not, because that has been moved electronically now that we have NTS, and they have loaded that into that link where you type in where do I vote. That's how they populate that. That was the school directory guide. So now that's there, that lives there. And actually the map is also sort of an updated of that because there has been so much rezoning, and then with all of the new construction, that really is the most up to date, that as well as the NTS link.
Now, is it possible to get the PDF? Some people, it's just easier.
Right.
Like they could just download it or they can copy it instead of clicking on different things.
I could ask them to see if they're able to pull it as a report for us.
Thank you.
So my 99-year-old abuelita does not know how to use the internet. If she called you, because she really loves phone calls, could she call you and share her address with you over the phone at City Hall, and could you share her polling location?
Of course, and she would probably be speaking with Ms. Sabri or Ms. Schenkman. So, yes.
All right, great. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Bonilla.
Thank you.
Next up are liaison reports. Do any of my colleagues have any liaison reports? Ms. Bavosa?
Just very briefly, the New Rochelle Fund for Educational Excellence has posted all of the upcoming events that it has available at its website, New Rochelle Fund, if you'd like to look that up. And the Rescue Health and Safety Committee, my colleague, Mr. Vega, was talking about the lakes, and maybe we could do some kind of collaboration with the city. There has been discussion, and things are moving forward. The city is aware of what needs to be done, and hopefully we will see progress on that. So that committee is very viable, working very hard, and moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Bavosa. Do any of my colleagues have any other reports? Seeing none, we're going to move on to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to convene into the public comment period of the meeting. The Board of Education adopted policy 1230 in April 2022 to ensure all members of the public had the opportunity to speak at both of our board meetings each month. We believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, understand the board will not respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel and students. Please know, however, that we take personal concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that right now our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. Finally, I want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you so choose. Tonight, we have set aside 30 minutes for public comment, where each speaker who has signed up before 3:30 today has 3 minutes to speak. If a person requests to speak after 3:30, speakers may sign up in person at the meeting with the clerk. First up for public comment, we have, Mr. Malfitano.
Where's the clock so I can keep it? Oh, okay, thank you. Good evening, Vince Malfitano. A couple of things. First, Ms. Bavosa, I wish you well. I always appreciated many of your comments. They were well placed. The election. My understanding is to qualify to vote, you don't have to bring any documents to prove you're a citizen. All you got to do is sign something under penalty of perjury. I wonder how many people in New York have actually been prosecuted for lying. I wonder if we even look. Is there a difference between registering for school board election and general election in terms of qualification? I don't know. Another couple things. Very disappointed to hear that for several years, we haven't had anybody sitting on the IDA. What a negligent situation. That's your responsibility, folks. And with all due respect, to hear people up here talking, you don't know anything about the pilots, you don't know what the money is. Let's find out. What, with all due respect, did you guys just come together today? This has been going on in town for decades. It's inherently negligent on the leadership of this board to not make sure somebody sat on the IDA. That's incredible to hear that. New students, yes, but I think it would help to have some sort of demographic information of, are these kids mostly needing special services, English as a second language? That drives our vision going forward. Kids leaving, do we ever do a follow-up with their families? Do we send a letter to their old address? Why did you leave? How come you're not going to the high school? I think that informs people to intelligently design programs. Why are we losing some students and getting others? Or what's going on here? Or are we just interested in numbers to fill the rooms? That worries me. The buses. I saw an interesting discussion the other day about the governor's mandate of having electric buses throughout the state. That it's estimated to cost anywhere in the neighborhood of $300 billion. These buses cost 3 times as much as a regular bus, and they don't operate well in cold weather. And you have to have charging stations for these in the district. You better take a look at that going forward, because this has to happen within 3 years. Okay? Let's get rid of all the gas-fired private carriers. We already had a massive increase in busing already. Now, I asked before, do we have more bus routes than last year? Do we have more kids? Or is it just contract? Because the amount of increase is massive. Please take a look at these things, folks. We have an election coming up with 4 seats, something I don't think has happened in the 40 years that this has been an elected board. But do you really want people to vote? Why don't we move the elections to November?
Thank you, Mr. Malfitano. Next up, we have Ms. Otilia Taylor-Tanner.
Thank you, Travis. So good evening, Ms. Barbosa. First, you're missed already. And I appreciate the information tonight regarding the budget. And second, Dr. Reynolds, I just want to say thank you. because regarding special education, we were at variance. We had several children added to our classrooms. It's been a very difficult 116, 117 days, and you added extra TAs to the classroom. That wasn't something that you had to do, so I appreciate you thinking about us. It still has been a very difficult time in our classrooms. So one of my questions regarding special ed, and I'm hoping, Mr. Vega, that you'd be interested in this as well, because we're all suffering, we're struggling a little bit. Who exactly is responsible for finding out about more state budget, more state aid for special education? We're at variance. So we should, who is chasing that money? And speaking of money, since we were talking about the budget, the pilot in the buildings, there's information there. And the last person who represented the school board was Amy Maselli. And I remember those meetings going back like 15, 20 years when I think we got $10 million before RXR broke ground. There's information that we're missing hundreds of thousands, lots of money. The information is there, and of course, I'll share the information that we have. We had a panel discussion and found out exactly how much money, you're welcome, how much money we're missing for our school. So, regarding equity, because this has a little bit to do about equity as well, when we have, and regarding special education, of course, when we have 40 extra children coming in, elementary level education, will that change the equity per pupil dollar amount? Do we know where those children are going to go? And will that change the formula at all? Because we are expecting more children in special education. So, and I know that we're having more assigned teachers, maybe for classrooms, but I wonder about the equity dollar amount per student if and when we have extra students added for special education. Will that skew the numbers at all? I do have to agree with Mr. Malfantano. We have to know what we're talking about when it comes to money, especially as a taxpayer and a homeowner. And these buildings, it's aggravating, and it makes people very angry to know that buildings are going up. The developers are probably making enough money, and we need to have some of that money for our children, for our students. So that's a priority for us. And the equity per student ratio is important. I don't want to run out of time, but thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm hoping that special education will give a very detailed information regarding the budget, because I haven't had the special education budget presentation in last year or this year, like detailed. How many students are out of district, how many students are receiving services. So I'd like to see that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor Tanner. Would anybody in the audience like to sign up for public comment that have not already? Ms. Carl?
Thank you. Lorraine Carl. Having attended many meetings about the pilot, I'd just like to educate you a little bit about it. The developers have no intentions of letting this pilot end. I'll give you an example. The first Avalon, which is the building in back of the Chase, that pilot was going to end, but and it's also been sold 3 times, and the pilot goes with the seller to the seller. So this particular building, they came back to the city, and that empty lot, they were supposed to put another building in, and the pilot was renewed. Okay, we, as citizens of New Rochelle, we went to meetings, we fought for this. That they contribute their fair share, but we were also told by the city manager at the time, children would not be coming out of that building, those buildings, and it would not affect our schools. So what you can do about it, I would go to the developers and ask them, we need this for the school, please donate it. That's the only way you're going to get that money back, because this is making money for the developers and not the city. And when you do your road shows, please bring the full budget with you, not just the slides, and do not underestimate the intelligence of the citizens of New Rochelle. They want to know what you're spending. The codes, fine, but we want to know what you are spending the money on. Because if you want to sell this budget, you just can't go with slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carl. Ms. Dasim?
Where is?
Hi, guys. I haven't seen you in a while. Been missing. We've had conflict meetings. And even today, I didn't get to hear most of the presentations. We had the city council meeting. At any rate, question that I'm wondering about. So we just approved all of this bond and money for new parking lot. We're going to tear down perfectly good homes for parking spaces at Columbus. And part of it was because of increased enrollment. But I think at the last meeting or the meeting before that, they actually said that we have a decrease in enrollment at Columbus, and we don't quite understand why. So based on that, I was wondering, are we still looking to do all of this expanded parking lot that I didn't think we needed to do, especially not before we find the alternative school a permanent home? So that's one. The other thing is, as I mentioned before about the budgets, for some reason we have like significantly reduced the information that we are giving so that you understand what you're voting for and that we understand what you're voting for. Again, we used to have presentations from just about all the different categories, demographics, security, the different schools. They came and they spoke about what it is that BOCES, what it is that they're charging us for and why they're charging us and how it differs. We had those details. That's how we knew that when they kept telling us the demographics was that, oh, it's not going to increase, we kept pushing back, both here and the city, that you must not be counting right because you have all of this influx of immigrants. So, wondering how do we get back to that? Because we are not getting the information that we need to really make an educated decision. And folks think it's just, oh, well, you know, we're seeing something a little bit less or simplified. We're not seeing anything at all. You guys have all of the documents. So you should be able to go back and see how you handled the budget season and how much presentation and information was presented to us. You guys were here, y'all were protesting, you were involved in it, so you know. So how this is acceptable now, I don't understand. I think that's something that we need to do, and we need to do now. We don't have that much time for the budget, and we had separate meetings covering the budget alone. That doesn't happen anymore. Why? It's still important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Desim. Would anybody else like to sign up for public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next item of the agenda. And the item we've all been dreading. So we're going to approve a resolution commending Ms. Bavosa on her last meeting on the Board of Education. I'm going to read the commendation first. I'm going to ask my colleagues to say a few words, and I'll give Ms. Bavosa a chance to say something, and then we will vote on it after words are said. So, whereas the term of office of Margaret E. Bavosa, a member of the Board of Education of the City School District of the City of New Rochelle since July 1st, 2021, and whereas Ms. Bavosa's tenure as a Board of Education member was distinguished by her profound dedication to the responsibilities of the office, an abiding commitment to the improvement of educational opportunities for all children, a notable interest in fostering excellence and equity in public education, and her concern for the productive and cost-effective management of the public schools of New Rochelle through her school board leadership. And whereas Ms. Bavosa has served as a tireless volunteer in various capacities, including as audit committee member, July 21 to present, New Rochelle Fund for Educational Excellence Liaison, 21 to present, Rescue Committee member, 22 to present, and member of the Board of Education School Board Buddy Program, 2021 to present. And whereas Ms. Bavosa is a proud resident of New Rochelle for over 40 years, a longtime public school educator teaching full-time in New Rochelle for 26 years, and has had her children and grandchildren in Webster, Trinity, Ward, Isaac E. Young, Albert Leonard, and New Rochelle High School. Whereas in recognition for her tireless service to the community and its youth, Ms. Bavosa has received honors and awards from organizations throughout Westchester and New York State, including several school board recognition week certificates of recognition from the New York State School Boards Association for dedicated leadership in public education and continuing service to the children of New Rochelle in 21, 22, 23, completion of the New York State mandated fiscal oversight fundamentals training and the New York State mandated new school board member academy. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education, for itself and on behalf of the people of New Rochelle whose trustee it is, conveys its most sincere gratitude and appreciation to Margaret E. Bavosa for her faithful dedication, extraordinary, tireless, and conscientious service with which she served the school system and its community as an ardent advocate for public education, and extends best wishes to Ms. Bavosa and her family for good health and happiness, many years of personal and professional accomplishments. And be it further resolved that this resolution, the highest honor in our power to bestow, be and hereby is made part of the official records of the Board of Education of the City School District of the City of New Rochelle, New York, and that a copy be transmitted to Ms. Bavosa bearing the official seal and the signatures of members of the Board of Education, Superintendent of Schools, and the Clerk and Secretary to the Board of Education. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately. I'm sorry, Ms. Margaret. Would any of my colleagues like to say something about Ms. Bavosa?
I'd love to. I'll keep it short, but we came on the board together, and I will miss you tremendously. You have, you're irreplaceable for real, and the real dedication you have to students is just commendable. And we are lucky as a district to have had you as a teacher, to have had you on the Board of Education. You've really gifted us with your knowledge, your empathy, your compassion, and you will sorely be missed.
Mr. Vega?
There a few years ago, and as soon as I heard you talking and found out who you were, I said, yeah, Margaret Bavosa is gonna win. She'll be on the board.
Ms. Lewis?
This also was our first year working together. But I will say that as someone who, you never know what you're going to walk into when you walk onto a board. And so I just want to say thank you for always being kind, giving me advice, guidance, recipes. You didn't have to do all of that, and you did. And for every student who is not here with us tonight, who's had you or has been impacted by you and your love and care, I thank you on behalf of all of us. I have friends who had you back in the day, and they still message me to tell you how much they love you. And so it goes beyond these four walls. It goes beyond everyone who's listening. But I know for sure that at least for those that were in my class who remember you, they love you dearly. I love you dearly. Thank you again for everything.
Ms. Castellano-Manaya?
Many teachers get to the point in their life when they retire, and it's all about enjoying their time, to calm down and to, really just been with their family and their friends, and it's so deserved. But this is a woman who said, I have a new path that I've been called to lead and bring that same magic that she brought to the classroom to her role on the board. And anyone who knows Margaret knows that the kind of teacher that she is the kind of teacher she's been to all of us on the board and anyone she interacts with. And everyone in this room knows that she brings out the best in each of us, even when we don't see it ourselves or even when we don't believe it ourselves. And that is why time after time, year after year, her students felt seen by her. They felt loved by her. They felt like they could be a better version of themselves. And she's done it with me, and I am forever changed and a better person as a result of her teaching and her friendship and her wisdom. She will be missed so much, but she has made such a positive impact on this board and on this district that will be felt for years and years to come. I am so proud to call you a colleague and a friend, and thank you for making me a better version of myself, the same way you've done for everyone whose life you have touched and you will continue to touch. Now it's time for you to focus on your health and your well-being, and we are all always here for you. Thank you, Margaret.
Margaret, it's been a pleasure, and I'm proud to call you a board colleague, friend, and a fellow educator. And I have a quote from Dr. Seuss. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. So as this chapter closes, a new one is opening. And you're going to find that your years of being a teacher of the young, will always follow you and always guide your path. So I wish you the best. I'm going to miss you sorely, but I'm glad and I feel blessed that I had a chance to work with you.
I definitely am going to cry if I talk too long, so I'm going to try to keep it short. Before I met Margaret, well, when I heard she was running for the board, actually, I was thinking of you, Dawn. Her legend preceded her. Everyone was like, oh, Margaret, you get to work with oh, that's going to be amazing. And it was a lot of hype, and I was like, oh, she can't be that amazing. And she actually was more amazing than all the hype that I heard before I met her. Her ability to keep the North Star of our students and our community at the center of every conversation, as I think, again, Dawn said, private and public. Margaret's integrity, her warmth is incomparable. Margaret's also tough as nails, has a huge heart, but equally huge brains. She's a reader, she's a writer, she's an educator. She takes such pride in the craft of education. I can only hope that every teacher in our district carries a little bit of Margaret in them when they're working with our students. If you've had the opportunity to experience the twinkle in Margaret's eyes when she smiles, when she laughs, you are one of the luckiest people on the earth. And I am so grateful for her friendship. I've learned so much, and she's not getting rid of me that easily because we're going to be friends for a long time. So thank you, Margaret, for joining us for this time. I'm forever grateful.
Margaret. Mary Oliver said, tell me what you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. And you've dedicated it to children, to teaching children, to serving this capacity on the board, to protect children. And like Adina said, Margaret is child-centric, but she's people-centric. She cares about staff, she cares about kids, making sure we're doing the right thing by everyone. And I've had the pleasure, in Margaret's 3 years, I've been in leadership 2 years, and you have not just been someone who tells it like it is, but you are someone who gives you advice, someone who supports, and I am forever grateful for having your friendship and your support over these couple years. I just want to say thank you, and this board owes you a deep debt of gratitude as well, because you have been an amazing addition to this board, bringing not just your experience as a teacher, but your knowledge as a New Rochelle resident, and just being bleeding purple. I can't say anymore because I will start crying, but I want to just thank you and thank you. Thank you. Dr. Reynolds?
Well, it's hard to bring up the rear. But I wanted to share with you, Margaret, that I'm going to speak not as a superintendent of schools, but as a teacher, because I'm forever a teacher. I've had the privilege and honor of working with dozens and dozens of board members, right, in my travels. And everything is relative. You know, one board's better than another because of X, Y, or Z. But you're creating the relativity for others. You are that North Star that others need to hold themselves to in this role. It's been mentioned tonight that you are student-centered. I need the audience to know how teacher-centered you are. I need everyone to know that you want what's right for kids through adults. And that's why I'm speaking as a teacher. It's very rare to find that in a board member, to have that understanding, to have that level of depth of knowledge of what is good for kids can only come through what is good for adults. And that is why this board is so centered on what is good for adults in this district. I think that you solely brought that light into the conversation, and you planted that seed that has just continued to grow and blossom and flourish. And I want to thank you on behalf of, this is the one time I'm going to tell Fuse I'm speaking for the teachers in the district. But I want to thank you on behalf of the teachers, the consummate teachers, those who are here, those who are retired, those who passed on, those who are yet to come. Thank you for making sure that we are using that lens to make sure we have what's and who's in place that's correct and who's correct for our children. Thank you for keeping us on that path.
Ms. Bonilla, I know you wanted to say something.
So in this role, I get to interact so much with each member of the board. And so I can honestly say, Margaret, you are just an exemplary board member. Anytime we have sent out any event invitation, anything happening in the district, Margaret would be the person responding and saying she's attending, she's going, she's interested in being involved. Anytime we sent any emails, she's so just thoughtful and sweet and just caring as a whole. It's no surprise that pretty much every colleague I have in City Hall or the district knows Ms. Bavosa. Oh, that's the special ed teacher, right? The board member that was a teacher in the district. I think he taught math, English. Everybody knew her. I was like, what does she teach? That everybody knew her. So I will really miss you. I will really miss how easy, it is to work with you, to get along with you. You're always, like Will had said before, you always have a smile on your face. You're always so caring, always so thoughtful. And we will definitely be losing a really good one. So I wish you the best in everything.
Thank you, Millie.
It's rare that I'm at a loss for words. I wrote something down because I didn't think I'd be able to speak. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve on the Board of Education in the city of New Rochelle these past 3 years. As some of you may know, I was severely injured in a serious accident a year ago, and it has recently become apparent that I still need much
in order to achieve a full recovery. Therefore, it's with great sadness that I have tendered my resignation, affording the community the opportunity to choose a replacement rather than having the position left open or having it replaced by appointment. The tremendous experience of serving on this board, as well as being the BOE representative on the Rescue Health and Safety Committee, the New Rochelle Fund for Educational Excellence, has been one for which I am most grateful. It's been an incredible honor to assist in efforts to improve the district, to provide all our students with the best education possible, to treat our teachers and all of our staff members with fair, supportive work conditions, and to share with our administrators a clear, honest, and forthright platform in which to guide our district to continued greatness. It is my hope that moving forward, special ed, Huguenot Academy, the resolution of the city with the flooding of Twin Lakes, and so many more interests are explored and resolved. As I leave the Board of Ed, I will miss all the district and community members with whom I share a deep bond. As well, I will miss all of you, especially those of you who attend so many meetings, who are so willing to give of your time, energy, and opinions to push our district forward. I am forever grateful for the goodness, integrity, industry, and understanding afforded me by all. I will never forget my time on this auspicious board. Thank you to each and every one of you for allowing me to serve you. I love you.
Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to approve resolution number 24-292, commending Margaret Bavosa as a member of the Board of Education?
So moved, Brooks.
Second, Ross.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Margaret. So our next meeting is going to be next Thursday, March 21st, 7 p.m. at Davis School. We're going to go into a quick executive session. Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to go immediately into executive session to discuss the employment history of particular persons?
So move, Williams.
Bavosa.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good night, everyone.
Okay. We're ready.
Colleagues, can I get a motion in a second to reconvene the public session of the meeting?
So move, Bavosa.
Second, Ross.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Colleagues, can I get a motion in a second to adjourn the meeting?
So move, Bavosa.
Second, Ross.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good night, everyone.